Welcome to the 700 Club. President Trump is once again standing up for Israel. He signed an executive order imposing sanctions on the International Criminal Court after its actions against Israeli leadership during the war in Gaza.
The White House isn't stopping there. The administration is also planning new moves against Hamas and Iran. Chris Mitchell brings us the story from Jerusalem.
President Trump's order imposes sanctions on the International Criminal Court over what the White House calls illegitimate and baseless actions targeting America and our close ally Israel, including issuing arrest warrants for the arrest of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant over their conduct of the war in Gaza. Trump accuses the ICC of abusing its power and setting a dangerous precedent by trying to arrest top leaders doing their job. The ICC is calling on its member states to stand up against Trump's sanctions. In Washington, Netanyahu met with more congressional leaders. Axios is reporting while Netanyahu was at the White House, he reportedly laid out his ideas for Phase 2 of the hostage deal in Gaza. They include top Hamas leaders going into exile and Israel ending the war. Netanyahu's spokesman says he didn't present a plan for a second stage of the deal. On Saturday, Hamas is set to free 3 more Israeli men held hostage in Gaza. The Trump administration is also taking more actions against Israel's enemies. One of new Attorney General Pam Bondi's first moves is launching a task force to punish the Hamas terrorists who attacked Israel on October 7th. Ynet News reports the Justice Department says it will seek to extradite the planners and perpetrators of that brutal assault, which killed 1,200 people in Israel, including 47 Americans. The task force will also go after Hamas supporters and funders in the U.S. And the Treasury Department is targeting an oil network which it says generates hundreds of millions of dollars for Iran's military. After meeting with congressional leaders and administration officials, Netanyahu said Thursday they asked him a simple question.
A country that is as small as New Jersey, from where do we get your strength? I said, our strength comes from our people and from our heroic soldiers, and from our faith and the understanding that we are fighting for thousands of years of Jewish history and for our right to a state of our own in the Middle East, in our historic homeland. This is the truth, and it will take us very far.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
What a difference an administration makes, finally going after the funding sources, finally standing up to what the ICC did. What a travesty of justice, where the chief prosecutor is, he's British, but his parents were Pakistani Muslims. The chief judge is now the prime minister of Lebanon, another Muslim. And you look at, what were they intentionally targeting Israel? The answer is absolutely yes. And they were trying to set the stage for the arrest of the prime minister and the defense minister, and they were trying to make Israel into this pariah nation, all because Israel was defending itself. The attack of October 7th was absolutely horrific. And the architects of that attack, the participants in that attack, were vowing to do it again and again and again until Israel no longer existed. Well, the international community should absolutely support Israel's right to defend itself. And that is part of international law. Israel is recognized by the United Nations. And as a recognized country, any ideology, any group of terrorists, any government that wants to wipe Israel off the map is moving against international law. So where's the justice in saying, well, we're going to put the leaders of Israel in jail when they tried to defend their own country? It makes no sense. And finally, we have some common sense in our administration. In other news, President Trump is starting a commission on religious liberty here at home, and he's working to stop bias against Christians. John Jessup has that story and more from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Gordon. The president made those announcements at the National Prayer Breakfast, where he also talked about how his faith in God strengthened after he was shot on the campaign trail. CBN White House correspondent Kelly Wright has the story.
President Trump announced he is launching a new presidential commission on religious liberty and an executive order that will target anti-Christian bias. Attorney General Pam Bondi will lead a new task force on stopping all forms of anti-Christian targeting and discrimination within the federal government. Also, it will prosecute anti-Christian violence and vandalism. During his appearance at the annual National Prayer Breakfast, President Trump announced that he will reestablish a White House faith office led by his longtime spiritual advisor, televangelist Paula White. The president started his day urging America to trust in God.
Faith in God has always been the ultimate source of the strength that beats in the hearts of our nation. We have to bring religion back. We have to bring it back much stronger.
President Trump making a declaration of faith during the 73rd National Prayer Breakfast at the U.S. Capitol. He urged Republican and Democrat congressional members to unite in their focus on faith, hope, and love for God and country. The president reminding the lawmakers about leaders of the past who helped to guide America spiritually, to be seen as a beacon of light. Leaders like George Washington, John Winthrop, and Billy Graham.
Billy Graham was very special. One floor below us, Reverend Graham's statue stands with an open Bible. The page turned to a letter from the Apostle Paul, which reads, "Let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up." Never give up. Never, ever give up. You can't.
At a second prayer breakfast, President Trump recognized one of the survivors of the October 7th attack in Israel. Noah Agora Amani was taken captive at the Nova Music Festival by Hamas.
For 245 harrowing days, Noah showed unwavering strength and courage and faith as she endured the unendurable, really, what she went through. But by the grace of God, she was rescued by the Israeli Defense Forces, and now she's come back to pray with us this morning.
The president continued his message about faith, focusing on the assassination attempt on his life when he was shot.
You know, honestly, it changed something in me. I feel even stronger. I believed in God, but I feel much more strongly about it. Something happened. So.
In a reference to the Sermon on the Mount, President Trump said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." Mr. Trump said he would like to be remembered someday as a man who served America and the world as a man of peace. In Washington, Kelly Wright, CBN News.
Thank you, Kelly. Well, another one of the president's executive orders quickly having an impact. The NCAA has changed its policies, now forbidding transgender athletes who are biological males from competing in women's sports. The move coming one day after the president signed an order banning trans athletes from women's and girls' sports. The new NCAA policy goes into effect immediately and applies to all athletes. Numerous lawsuits related to transgender athletes in women's sports had been filed against the Athletic Association. Well, a new documentary shines a light on the growing persecution of evangelical Christians in Ukraine, a crisis few in the West know about. A Faith Under Siege takes viewers to the front lines where pastors and missionaries are bringing hope in the middle of horror. CBN's Chuck Holton has a story.
The Russian war against Ukraine has taken a brutal toll, not just on soldiers, but on Christians who refuse to bow to Moscow's demands. Amid the devastation, a new documentary seeks to expose the truth about religious persecution in Ukraine.
The Christian role in this struggle is so critical.
We come to minister to them, to see them, to listen to them.
It's called A Faith Under Siege.
There's a lot of propaganda out there. Our thesis was you don't fight propaganda with more propaganda, you fight propaganda with truth. And the best truth is personal stories of folks that are there, that have lived this kind of stuff.
The documentary features firsthand accounts of pastors, aid workers, and believers who have been captured, tortured, or forced to flee because of their faith.
The folks that stayed in these war-torn areas to help and to minister to their folks and to others, to provide aid, were really doing some amazing stuff. When the Russians took over and found these evangelicals They find them very threatening.
CBN News traveled to Ukraine to join former Green Beret Christian Hickey, who moved his family there in 2022 as a missionary to soldiers fighting and dying on the front lines.
We want to give the food hand with a Bible and pray. So we just don't want to give food. We actually want to give Jesus, and that food gives us the access and placement to have a conversation about Jesus.
A Faith Under Siege isn't just about exposing Russian war crimes. It's a call to action for Christians worldwide to pray and stand with their brothers and sisters in Ukraine.
God is our refuge and our strength, a very present help in trouble.
The film is getting exposure at the Museum of the Bible, and producers say they hope to shed light on the crisis and mobilize Christians. Our reporting on the ground matches the claims made in the film that evangelical Christians in Ukraine are facing targeted persecution at the hands of Russian forces. This is the Good News Church in Kramatorsk, and it's only about 10 miles from what is now the front lines of this war. Before the war started, they had about 700 people every week, and most of those people fled after the war started. But now they say they have a new church here because they have about 200 people every week who come that weren't members of the church before the war started, but came looking for help, and this is where they found it.
I think the biggest thing is really praying for the Christians that are caught in this conflict and that they're able to serve as a model for our faith, both in staying strong, providing aid, being a beacon of light to their community, as well as just an end to this war, a just end to this war.
From Ukraine, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
Thanks, Chuck. Gordon, you well know that Ukraine is seen as the Bible Belt between East and West. And for people who want to see more information about the movie, they can go to cbnnews.com.
Yeah, I do know well the history of Christianity in Ukraine. There's now a stark division between the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and the Russian Orthodox Church. The patriarch of the Russian Orthodox has really twisted St. Augustine's doctrine of just war, and he's issued an opinion that the war in Ukraine is just and that Russia is in the right because they're trying to wipe out the Nazis of Ukraine. And that propaganda has spread throughout Russia, where literally even within families, because there are families across this border, so a family in Ukraine will be told by their relatives in Russia, well, you deserve this because of all the bad things that you have done. Part of the war is trying to assert religious control over Ukraine, and that's absolute. And talk to any missionary that has ever been to the former Soviet Union, has, after the fall, tried to work. All of that is being shut down because of the link between the Russian Orthodox Church and President Putin. This is trying to impose that. And so if you're evangelical and you're in that war zone, the evangelical pastors are coming under severe persecution. We need, as Americans, to stand against that. America believes in liberty, that liberty is the oxygen of humanity. That liberty says that you have the absolute right to freedom of conscience. You can believe in the religion of your choice, or you can believe in no religion at all. That's part of the deal, too. That's the whole meaning behind freedom of religion. And so let's stand with our Christian brothers and sisters in Ukraine. If you want to find out more about this, because the film has eyewitness testimonies, you don't have to take my word for it. You can watch it yourself as to what is going on to the evangelical pastors there, what is happening to their churches, how they're being intentionally targeted. It's all in this wonderful movie, and you can find out more about Faith Under Siege by visiting cbnnews.com.